Welcome back to Prudence Coaching English class. Hello students. Today we are going to discuss the line by line explanation from the poem The Cold Within, written by James Patrick Kinney. We will discuss an introduction to the poem, line by line explanation, and about the poet. You should read like a teacher to become a pro. Today we are going to discuss the word notes and the stanza wise summary from this poem. Yes, students, if you once watch this full video, you can write all the questions from this poem yourself. I know, students, your examination is knocking at the door, so prepare this poem from this video and be the master of writing all the questions yourself. So let's start. Here is the introduction of the poem, which will help you to understand the major theme of the poem. Here it is. The poem The Cold Within displays a strong message against racial discrimination. It reveals the cold feelings that separates man because of the indifference of man towards his fellows. The poet has tried to project the idea that harboring prejudices against each other will ultimately prove fatal. The poem teaches how, in today's generation, prejudices, malices, biases, discrimination, and racism can destroy human beings and eventually the world itself. Now, this is the first stanza of the poem. You can see that, students, the poem is divided into 8 stanzas. This is the first stanza. We will read the stanza and explain its line by line explanations. So, let's start. 6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story is told. Before the explanation, I would like to tell you to know the word notes which will help you to understand the poem better. Here, happenstance means by chance, bleak means dull, bitter cold means intense cold, and possessed means holding. Now, I will tell you the line by line explanation. So, here the poet is saying that he had heard a tale of 6 humans where the group of people were trapped unfortunately or by chance in a place which was full of bitter cold, and each of these human beings were having a wooden stick with them. Now I'll tell you the paraphrase which will help you to know the passage more in detail. Stanza 1, Paraphrase. The poem recounts a tale he has heard of 6 persons caught together in the grip of a severe winter. Each of them had a wooden stick to feed the fire and arouse it. They were trapped by happenstance, implying no escape from a situation created by chance. The adjectives dark and bitter, describing the cold, add to the ominous feeling. Now we are going to read the second stanza, stanza 2. Their dying fire in need of logs. The first man held his back, for of the faces round the fire he noticed one was black. Now here is the word notes which will help you to understand the lines better. So let's discuss this first. Of the faces means among the faces, and here the word dying fire means the fire which was going out from the sight of the 6 human beings sitting there. It is used as a message to everyone to forget all the discrimination from a man to another man and give their stick of wood and save their lives. So, here in the second stanza, the poet tells us that the fire was going to be extinguished soon in need of logs. Now the 6 men looked at each other, and among the 6 persons, the first man held his stick tightly. He looked at other faces and found that among the 6 there was a black person too. So here in this sense, his sense of racism was sticking him not to give his stick into the fire. Now I will read the paraphrase of the poem, which will help you to know this stanza in detail. The fire was dying fast in need of logs. The first one amongst the six was a woman who looked around at the faces and found a black man amongst them. The prejudiced woman withdrew her stick as she felt it would be a waste to spend it on the black. This is racism, where there is discrimination because of a person's race. Now, the third stanza. The next man, looking across the way, saw one not of his church, and couldn't bring himself to grip the fire stick of birch. So let's learn these word notes. Cross the way means it is a phrase which means something is across the way if it is nearby on the opposite side of a road or area. Next, of his church means belonging to the same parish or same religion or same ideas. Birch means a forest tree. You can see this is the birch tree and this is the birch forest. Now let's learn the line by line explanation. Here the poet wishes to say that the second man was a religious person. He looked at others and found that no one belonged to his parish. And as for that purpose, he thought that as he did not know anyone else, he will not sacrifice his wooden birch or his wooden stick, which was a wooden birch or wood of birch. Now let's learn the paraphrase. Here is the paraphrase for the third stanza. The second person looked across the fire and saw someone who he knew did not share his religious ideology. He thus felt it would be a waste to spend his wood for the people he did not know. This is bigotry, which speaks of intolerance to a person because they do not share the same opinions or ideas. Now, the fourth stanza. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use to warm the ideal rich? So now let's learn the word meanings. Here tattered means old and torn. Hitch means move with jerks. The tattered clothes in the cold weather hint at poverty. Now let's learn the line by line explanation. So in this fourth stanza, the poet tells us the third person amongst the sixth person was sitting there in the torn and old clothes. He pulled his cloth closer to him so that it can give him a warmth feeling. And next he thought that why should he sacrifice his own wooden stick to give the warmth to the rich who are very much indifferent to the poor person. Now here he tried to take the revenge against the ideal rich persons. Now I'll tell you the paraphrase regarding this fourth stanza. The third amongst the six was a poor man in tattered clothes. He tried to adjust his clothes closer to his body to dry out some warmth from the inadequate clothing. He hesitated to give his stick in fire. He is defensive, and in his eyes, the rich do not deserve his meager ration, and he will not part with his stick. We see that he is a victim of classism or discrimination based on social and economic class, considering those favorably placed men him to be idle. Now, the fifth stanza. The rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. Now, the next person was a rich man who thought that why he would waste his wooden stick, which he considered a good wealth for him. And he thought that other persons are poor there who are very much inactive and lazy. So it would be completely an insensible idea to waste or to sacrifice his wooden stick for these lazy poor fellows. Now, here you can see the meaning of the words. Lazy means inactive or worthless, and shiftless means having no inspiration to work. Now here is the paraphrase for stanza 5. The fourth man was a fellow, greed blinds him, was a rich fellow. Greed blinds him as he selfishly connives to keep his wealth. He thought of the wealth which was a log indeed he had in store. He holds on to his stick like a miser and denies to sacrifice his stick for the lazy and the aimless poor. Now the sixth stanza. The black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his sight. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. Now let's learn the word notes. Here bespoke means expressed, revenge means vengeance or avenge, and spite means ill will. Now let's learn the line by line explanation. So in this sixth stanza, the poet is talking about the racial discrimination between the whites and the black. Here the black person is the victim who tries to take revenge against the white person. He looked at other person who were whites, and he thought that this is the right time for him to take revenge by not giving his wooden stick onto the fire. So in this way the black person tried to take revenge against the white persons who were very much indifferent to the black persons. Now we will know the paraphrase. Paraphrase for stanza 6. The fifth man among them was a black man. There was an expression of revenge on his face. The black person who is the victim of racism becomes an abuser here. Looking at his stick, he was indecisive whether to put it the fire. He realized that the fire was fast getting spent, even though he didn't give his stick into the fire to satisfy his revenge against the white person. In this stanza, we find that the spark of human kindness had died in him, and literally too, he chose to let the group's fire die. He would perish, but he would take the others he hated down with him as well. Now the next stanza, stanza 7. The last man of this forlorn group did not expect for gain. Giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. Now in the seventh stanza, we find that the last man in the group believed in the give and take theory of life. He believed that he would help only to those who had helped him earlier. And in this way, he was the loser in the game. Now you can see this meaning. Forlorn means neglected or helpless, and not means nothing. Now let's learn the paraphrase for 7th para. The last man in the group believed in the give and take policy of life. He would help only to those who helped him earlier. Unfortunately, none in the group had helped him ever, and therefore he didn't sacrifice his stick to feed the fire. This stanza refers to a look shared between people where each hopes that the other will do something that all of them want, but none are willing to initiate. Now the next stanza, the last stanza of the poem. Their logs held tight in death's still hands was proof of human sin. They didn't die from the cold without, they died from the cold within. So this is the concluding stanza. Here you need to learn the word notes. The proof of human sin actually refers to the selfishness, and the logs in their hands are the proof of human sin. So let's learn about the line by line explanation. In the concluding stanza, the poet tells us that all of them All the six persons were very much selfish, and as a result, they did not sacrifice their logs and hold their stakes very much tightly in their hands. So, just because of it, they died not because of the atmospheric temperature, rather, they died for the coldness of their heart. Now, let's learn about the paraphrase for the last stanza. Each among the six men in group possessed their sticks tightly in their hands and was unwilling to give it in dying fire. It proved that their mind was full of sinful thoughts which keep them away from helping each other. Each individual became their own agent of death, their hands frozen stiff with their refusal to act. They did not die due to the cold weather outside, rather it was the cold in their hearts, that is the indifference which ultimately led them to a grimful consequences. Now let's learn about the poet. Here we can see that an American poet, James Patrick Kinney, is the best known for his inspiring poem The Cold Within. He was born on 16th March 1923 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Born in a very poor Irish family in Cincinnati, he had a very tough childhood. He had to drop out of high school in order to take care of his mother. After that, he spent his whole life in self-education in writing poems. The poem The Cold Within had been written during the civil rights movement, perhaps to bring about the futility of discrimination and let it be known to the world. Originally read at an ecumenical council meeting, the poem became well known throughout the United States. He lived his life with his principles and created a poem that reflected his heart. This famous poet died on May 29, 1974. So students, I hope that you have understood the poem extremely well. If you have any problem, just comment and we will help you instantly. Thanks for watching this content, students. Goodbye.